The Boston Celtics are about 2 weeks away from officially embarking on their quest to win back-to-back NBA championships. But if you're still looking to soak in Banner 18 and all the glory of Celtics past titles, we have the perfect book in store for you. It's called The Boston Celtics, an illustrated timeline. The book tells the illustrated story with detailed descriptions about all of those special moments in the franchise's history. And joining us now is author Gary Washburn, a national basketball writer and Celtics reporter for the Boston Globe. And Gary, thank you so much for joining us. I want to just start with this. What inspired you to put this together?
Well, I was approached about doing a book about the history, and we decided 175 of the organization's top moments. So that was difficult because obviously 78 years of Celtics basketball, 18 championships, amazing players. So I had to pick 175 of the storied moments, some good, some bad, mostly good, obviously, with all the success that the Celtics have had for this franchise. So that was a difficult part, but it was cool to be able to kind of go back and learn things I had not known about this organization, how it all started, the great history of diversity and inclusion that they've had, and also touch on all those championships. A lot of those championships, obviously, before our time that we don't remember, but to kind of relive those and remember how awesome and amazing they were, especially in those Bill Russell days in the 1960s.
What was the hardest part about putting this all together? Because you just hit on the storied history of this franchise, and there are a lot of famous photos. So how do you put together 175 moments that you want to capture?
Yeah, it was just, the toughest part was leaving something out. And I've talked to Celtic fans since the book's been out and said, oh, you could have included this, or you could have included that. And so, yeah, like they're right. I could have probably went 250 moments or 275 moments because there's so much in this organization. Obviously, all through the 60s, all the great championships, the moments, and in the 70s with Tommy Heinsohn and Dave Cowens, JoJo White, John Havlicek winning 2 championships. Then obviously the Bird era, obviously those great years, 3 championships in 6 years. So all the great historical moments. And then the players, like I wanted to feature some players. And I also wanted to feature some players who people hadn't talked about much. Obviously, you're a baseball guy. Some of those guys who wore the Red Sox uniform that might have just contributed to a world championship. We talk about like a Dave Roberts who just stole 1 base in 2004, and he comes back and he gets standing ovations. And this is the same with the Celtics. Guys like Paul Silas and Charlie Scott who came, Nate Tiny Archibald, who came here, won championships, didn't stay here long, but just had a memorable time here and helped Boston get to the top.
You talked about the early part of the Celtics history. What's something that you didn't know about the Celtics franchise history that when doing this book, you actually found something out about it?
Well, I think the diversity, the first franchise to draft a black player in Chuck Cooper, the first black starting 5, 1964. It was kind of a unwritten rule that every team had to have 1 white starter. Red Auerbach broke that when Tommy Heinsohn got hurt. He installed Willie Knowles into the starting lineup and kept John Havlicek as a 6th man. So that was a historical moment. Also naming Bill Russell the first African-American coach of any major sport and naming him player coach. But also, some of the close calls that they had, everybody thinks that the Celtics just literally walked over all their opponents and smashed them, but not really. They won a lot of amazing Game 7s, a lot of amazing moments where they had to win on the road or they had to get the Havlicek stole the ball, that moment, or getting a block shot from Bill Russell or maybe an opposing player from the Lakers or the Hawks missing a shot at the buzzer that would have won it. This team had so much championship metal to win. Obviously 11 in the 13 years of Bill Russell, but you look at how close they were and how clutch they were. That's what surprised me.
Yeah, and that makes me think of 1969. They were the 4th seed that year, and they end up winning a Game 7 on the road against the Lakers. Speaking of the Lakers, I think what's fascinating about you putting this book together, people in this area, they know your work. They've known of your work for a long time. You've been covering the Celtics for about 15 years, but you're originally a Lakers fan.
Yeah.
So is there any part of you that kind of laughs a little bit that you put together a book about the history of the Celtics?
The irony is never lost. Growing up, living literally 5 minutes from the Forum, riding my bike around the parking lot. I remember I wanted to go to one of the parades, the championships parades, but it was a schoolmate's 10th birthday party. So I had to go to that, and I was just bummed out like that. I had to go to his birthday party over the Lakers championship parade when I was young. So yeah, I was a huge fan. I had a picture on my bedroom wall, the 1979-80 team, the Magic's rookie year when he obviously went crazy in Game 6 against the Sixers in the final. So yeah, huge fan. And then when I got here, obviously much older, to learn how the other half lives, learn how this organization, the pride of the organization, how much people love the Celtics, and also meeting a lot of the greats. A lot of, obviously, Tom Heinsohn before he passed, John Havlicek, meeting Bill Russell, Casey Jones, Sam Jones, a lot of those legends. Still, it's been a blessing to be around and to meet all those legends and just know that the history of this organization. And when you go to TD Garden and you look on the banners and you're like, wow, this is his history that I'm kind of being a part of here.
As it's related to the Celtics team that just won a championship this past year, what was your favorite moment to capture and then picture that you enjoyed the most looking back on this past year?
Probably just Jaylen Brown kind of getting his flowers, winning the Eastern Conference Finals MVP and the NBA Finals MVP, and just seeing those guys having covered Tatum and Brown throughout their entire career, Tatum celebrating and being able to let loose, get the monkey off his back in terms of just all the pressure that had been on him and Jaylen, because they had fallen short. They had fallen short in 23 in that difficult series against Miami. They had lost in the finals in 22 against the Warriors, a series they led 2-1 and led in Game 4. And if they close that game out, they probably get to the championship, but they didn't get it. So all the times, the close calls, those tough losses to LeBron James and the Cavaliers, for them to finally get to the top was really fun to see those guys enjoy it. Al Horford, after 17 years, long years, bouncing around, obviously going to Boston and leaving and then coming back and winning a championship. So that was the most enjoyable, is to see the expression on those guys' faces, their relief and the thrill of winning their first championship.
Since we have you, I want to ask a couple of questions about this year's team with the season approaching us in a couple of weeks. Do you view the Celtics as the favorite again to win it all this year?
I do, because everyone's back, and they seem to have the right mindset. Obviously, any time you try to repeat, that second year is tougher. You don't glide through a second year after winning a championship. There's going to be adversity. There's going to be potential injuries, as we all know, like Kristaps Porzingis is going to miss the first 2 months. Every team is going to look at you as their Super Bowl. So they're going to have to face adversity that they did not face last year, because now they're the hunted. But I do think they have the right approach. I think Joe Mazzulla's done a fantastic job of kind of putting in their heads, hey, let's forget about 24. Let's forget about the championship and all the champagne and all the celebration. It's a new year, and we're chasing something too. They're chasing history. They want to be the first Celtics team to repeat since 1969. Like, as much as we love the great Bird teams, and obviously with Pierce and Garnett and Allen, they only won one championship. Bird and those guys didn't repeat. The 70s teams didn't repeat. The last time was 1969. They can make history. Obviously, it's a long time ago, 55 years. Can they be that team, that first team in 55 years to repeat? I think they can.
Yeah, I thought it was amazing. You pointed out in one of your recent articles that a champion the next year hasn't made it past the second round since that 17 Warriors team that ended up winning again in 2018. You had a chance to cover the USA team, the basketball team, in the Olympics. You got to see a couple of the Celtics out there, but it felt like so many of the storylines surrounding the Celtics were things that you wouldn't have hoped for after a championship year. Jason Tatum not playing as much, Jaylen Brown not being selected to the team. Do you think that fuels them this year?
I think it does. I think with Jaylen Brown, I think he had an enjoyable summer. He was able to travel and do a lot of great things off the floor. But I think that in the back of his mind, that burned him to not even get an invite, especially after winning, obviously, Eastern Conference Finals MVP and NBA Finals MVP. For him not to even get a call, even when Kawhi Leonard was out. And I think he was happy for Derek White, and I think everyone was happy for Derek White to be part of that team. But I think Jaylen felt like, hey, I should be part of this. I'm one of the best players in the league. And then for Jason to sit the two games against Serbia, and even the second one against Serbia, when the USA trailed most of the way, looked like they were going to lose. Like, they couldn't have used Tatum out there. Like, he couldn't have. Like, he's a top 5 player. He couldn't have helped him hit a shot, play defense, block a shot, do anything. Like, you didn't have any use for him. I think that has to be also in the back of Jason's mind about people doubting whether he's a top 5 player, whether he's one of the elite players in the league. So both of them, which is not usual for championship teams, don't go into the next season, with pats on their back. They go in with some fire because they felt disrespected.
As it's related to the rest of the NBA, who do you view as the biggest threat to the Celtics?
Well, I think there's obviously 2 teams in the East, the Philadelphia 76ers and the New York Knicks. The Knicks have been ramping up to face the Celtics for the last several months, getting Mikal Bridges and now getting Karl Anthony Towns. So their starting lineup is stacked, it's loaded, and the Knicks haven't won a title in 51 years, 1973. That's a little before your time. So, I mean,
just a little.
Yeah, they're chasing that elusive ring. And so we talk about championship droughts in Boston, nothing compared to that one for the New York Knicks. And the Philadelphia 76ers ramping up, getting Paul George and guys like former BC standout Reggie Jackson, Eric Gordon, Caleb Martin, kind of a Celtic killer, and then a healthy Joel Embiid. They feel like they have enough too. So I think the 2 teams coming out of the East, the Knicks and the Sixers are the teams that could challenge it the most. The West is treacherous. Obviously, Dallas could be back. Minnesota, Denver, we saw them over the last couple of days against the Celtics. So it's going to be a tough road to a potential repeat for the Celtics, believe me.
Final thing before we let you go, and you brought up his name a little bit before, Joe Mazzulla, and of course now in his 3rd year at the helm of the Celtics, and the team did win a championship last year. I've enjoyed some of your back and forth with Joe Mazzulla over these last couple of years. What is it like to cover this guy on a day-to-day basis?
Well, Joe's an intense guy, and if you get to know him, he thinks outside the box. He walks to the beat of his own drummer, and I think that you have to, like anything, I'm covering a team that's chasing a championship, so I'm going to challenge him. If they fall short, I'm going to have questions for him, why they lost the game. And when they're doing well, I'm going to have questions of why they won and praise them. I think that you have to cover the team evenly with no bias. And I think Joe is just intense. He's intense when it comes to being in his jiu-jitsu. He's intense with basketball. He's intense with eating a grilled cheese sandwich. That's just who he is. And I think as long as you get used to that, we have a healthy respect for each other, even though we go at each other. And I think I wouldn't want it any other way because he challenges me and I definitely challenge him.
Well, I'm trying to balance out the Joes, keep it a little bit calmer here. But again, I love your work with the Boston Globe, and be sure to check out the new book, The Boston Celtics, an Illustrated Timeline. Gary Washburn, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be here.